proclamation of the Holy Gospel according to Luke. The tax collectors and the sinners were all gathering around Jesus to hear him, at which the Pharisees and scribes murmured, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Then he addressed this parable to them. A man had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the estate that is coming to me." So the father divided up the property. Some days later, this younger son collected all his belongings and went off to a distant land, where he squandered his money on dissolute living. After he had spent everything, a great famine broke out in that country, and he was in dire need. So he attached himself to one of the propertied class of the place, who sent him to his farm to take care of the pigs. He longed to fill his belly with the husks that were fodder for the pigs, but no one made a move to give him anything. Coming to his senses at last, he said, "How many hired hands at my father's place have more than enough to eat, while here I am starving? I will break away and return to my father, and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against God and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.'" With that, he set off for his father's house. While he was still a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was deeply moved. He ran out to meet him, threw his arms around his neck, and kissed him. The son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against God and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son." The father said to his servants, "Quick, bring out the finest robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and shoes on his feet. Take the fatted calf and kill it. Let us eat and celebrate, because this son of mine was dead and has come back to life. He was lost and is found." Then the celebration began. Meanwhile, the elder son was out on the land. As he neared the house on his way home, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He called one of the servants and asked him the reason for the dancing and the music. The servant answered, "Your brother is home, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has him back in good health." The son grew angry at this and would not go in. But his father came out and began to plead with him. He said in reply to his father, "For years now I have slaved for you. I never disobeyed one of your orders, yet you never gave me so much as a kid goat to celebrate with my friends. Then, when this son of yours returns, after having gone through your property with loose women, you kill the fatted calf for him." "My son," replied the father, "you are with me always, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice. This brother of yours was dead and has come back to life. He was lost and is found." The Gospel of the Lord.
Our Gospel for today, the 4th Sunday of Lent, Year C, comes from the 15th chapter of St. Luke, which many experts call the Gospel within the Gospel. They say, if you want to have a good summary of the Gospel truth, turn to chapter 15 of St. Luke. And this gives us a lot of joy and encouragement. You know, the parable of the prodigal son, or some call it the prodigal father, ends with a feast, a joyful ending to the story. And the 4th Sunday of Lent is usually called Laetare Sunday. We are being given the encouragement to be joyful in our journey towards the Holy Week. Let us not be afraid to journey with Jesus as He faces His cross. Now, I think the line of thinking that we want to develop as a reflection on the Gospel would be based on what we have already said regarding the first 2 readings. And the category is gift. In the first reading, from the book of Joshua, the people Israel have now received the gift, the promised land. Formerly in the desert, they had the gift of the manna to feed them. Now, the promised land is there, the ultimate gift. But the manna ceased. The manna stopped because now they have to work. They should not waste the gift of the land. They should be grateful, but their gratitude must also be coupled with responsibility, initiative, work. In the second reading, St. Paul tells the Corinthians that they have received a gift, a new creation in Jesus Christ, who has reconciled us with the Father. This is the new order that is being offered to us. What a gift! Now, St. Paul says, the gift can be explained this way. Jesus shared our human condition so that we can share in God's holiness. That is the gift. We have a share in God's life. We now have a share in God's holiness, thanks to Jesus. And we should not waste that gift. Now, in the parable of God's mercy, shown to us through this prodigal father, the loving father who had two sons. Now, Jesus intended this parable to the Pharisees and the scribes who were quite scandalized that he was eating with sinners, he was blending with sinners, and Jesus really felt upset that these Pharisees could not rejoice that the sinners are now being given a gift. They are being offered new life. They are now being reconciled with God. No? Para bagang, eto na nga, binibigyan na ng regalo, tuwan-tuwa yung mga makasalanan, galit na galit naman yung mga self-righteous. Because the Pharisees and the scribes felt that these sinners do not deserve the gift of God's mercy. That's why they cannot rejoice with them. Jesus now gives them the parable, and we learn a lot about this. We know that the younger son asked the father for a share of his inheritance. He wanted to get the gift intended for him, inheritance. But he wanted it way in advance. The father was still alive, but he was already claiming his share of the gift. Well, of course, he knew that he would receive something. He knew that something had already been reserved by the father for both of them. So he had every right to claim it. Although humanly speaking, that is painful for the parent, for the father. You're still very much alive. And the inheritance that is due to the son is now already being claimed. But the father was so gracious, he gave to the son his share. His share. Now, looking at the background of the second reading and the first reading, we should reflect on the inheritance that this son received and the inheritance that we also receive. This is not just about money. This is not just about property.